Hello guys, it's me, Greed here. The patch notes, the mid-season patch notes for Season 17 came out a few days ago, and I wanted to give it a couple of days for me to kind of process the changes and see what they were like before I made a video on them. But now that I've played the game a bit, and I'm willing to talk about the changes, I thought, now it's time for a video. We're doing the bullet point method again. People seem to like my last video, where I tried to make it a bit more coherent with bullet points, so we're doing that again. So, patch notes. D.Va changes. This is the first change of the patch notes. She had changes to her heavy rockets perk. The number of rockets that she fired is reduced from 8 to 7. Impact damage reduced from 7 to 5. Explosion damage increased from 4 to 22. Explosion radius increased from 2.75 to 3 meters. Projectile gravity increased. So, my problems with these D.Va changes specifically are that they do not actually address any of the core issues with D.Va. D.Va is already a character that's incredibly overpowered, and this did nothing to do that. If anything, all it did was increase her lethality, which is not a good thing considering the fact that the reason that she is overpowered is, generally speaking, her lethality. It's very rare for a D.Va to go and force out an angle or to occupy space and then get a losing exchange in that duel, because she has to put up very little resources to actually get a very high amount of value just by simply flying at people, because she can so easily kill targets and survive at the same time. And I don't think it's good to kind of increase the spam of the character either, because when you increase the projectile explosion radius from 2.75 to 3 meters, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you actually calculate the area, it's a pretty big difference, and you can spam targets from pretty far. Now obviously the projectile gravity increase just essentially means how much dip there is in those rockets now. They're slightly harder to shoot, but past like a gold level, this is going to be a complete non-factor, and even in a gold level, it's only going to take a couple of games for 95% of D.Va players to get used to this, if that's the perk they're picking. But yeah, overall, not a fan of these D.Va changes. So, next changes are Orisa changes. Her armor health was reduced from 325 to 300, and her energy javelin, her secondary ability, cooldown increased from 6 to 7 seconds. Now, obviously, Orisa nerfs are good. Orisa is obviously way too strong. This lowers her survivability in two ways. The first is lowered armor obviously just means less overall HP, so she'll die faster. And the increase in javelin, the spear that she throws, means that she can't get targets off her as effectively anymore. So it's less of a spam ability, more of a survivability tool now, which honestly I think is a little bit worse. Overall, I think the better way to actually attack Orisa's spear and the issues with it is to make it less effective at its job with a lowered cooldown. So for example, maybe less damage, less boop, and so on, but you can lower the cooldown a bit more, even keep it at 6 seconds, because right now it's just going to increase the amount of passive play used for it. Orisa players are now, instead of just chucking it out for damage or whatever, are going to be holding on to it longer, so that when they do end up using it, it's more of a perfect use, because the amount of times you use it per fight is lowered when you increase the cooldown. Therefore, the less times you can use an ability in a fight, the more effective you want that ability to be. So increasing cooldowns can actually make shit feel a lot worse overall, and I think this change might end up doing that. Obviously this doesn't attack the main issue with Orisa either, which in my opinion is her ability to poke and her bursty sustain. It's her ability to kind of walk into any space that she wants and shoot you, and then once she ever gets into any danger, it's, oh, I'm putting a shield down, or I'm spinning my wheel, or I'm activating Fortify, just so I can stay where I am longer. It decreases her punishment window, because it makes it so that if you do go to punish her, you have to fight through those initial survivability cooldowns that she doesn't have to use in order to get into a position that she doesn't want to move from. So all her abilities are just really good at making her stand stationary, take a point, stand on it forever. So again, these are good changes at stopping her from doing that, but the javelin spin might make her more annoying for things like Ryan players and Ram players, because the Orisa is more likely to use it on them. Obviously, the increase on the spear will lower her survivability against tanks as well. So that's another reason she'll want to be able to use it on a tank hero, and therefore hold it for a more opportune moment to get more value out of it. Because with a larger cooldown, she obviously can't boop people as effectively. Therefore, when people do get on top of her, she's gonna have struggles surviving against them, which is a good thing, but it also, like I said, leads to them holding the cooldown for longer, which isn't good. I would have liked if they lowered her damage output as well. Right now she just does way too much damage. I'm not necessarily against keeping her 0 fall-off damage. I think fall-off damage on Orisa feels kind of shit, and overall it should just be an overall decrease to her damage potential, because she's already quite a bully at close range. She doesn't need the bully potential, the long range poke potential, and the close-up damage potential. An overall damage decrease fixes the issue of the long-range poke and the close-up bullying, whereas just decreasing the range, it makes it so she's still effective at bullying people at close range, which is still not what I want. Another change I would have liked to see for Orisa is them ditching the shield perk. I don't think the shield perk is interactive or very fun to play with or against. It again just increases how passive the Orisa player wants to play, because once you've set a shield down, obviously you don't want to go past your shield until you've got another shield up, so it just makes it so once you plant your feet, you're even less likely to move than you already were, which again I don't think is good. I made a lot of videos about my dislike of poke and it being so strong, and this is a clear buff to poke, so I don't like it. But it is what it is. Overall, decent changes for Orisa in the sense that they're going in an okay direction for the hero, but obviously not perfect changes. That I would have preferred some other stuff. Reinhardt, crushing victory in major perk. Overhealth gain increased from 50% to 100% of charge damage. Now, on paper, this probably sounds like a fine change. Reinhardt's really not a very good tank right now, and is a big resource hog. He does require probably the most resources in the game out of any other tank, so it would make sense to give him a slight reduction in the amount of resources he may need to be aggressive. So on paper, this change sounds fine, but overall, I think the direction for it isn't the best. It's going to increase the amount of dive Ryan getting played, and I don't mind dive Ryan. I think it's okay, but overall, for the direction of the character, I would prefer if he went back to being a frontline brawl tank instead of an angle clearing bot. Now, obviously, in the highest levels of play, he's not just an angle clearing bot. You do have to frontline as well, but I don't like that you can or must do this dive Ryan playstyle of charging on an angle, cancelling, beating the fuck out of that guy, running away with your shield. I don't like that overall playstyle. It makes him kind of cheesy. It makes him a bit like D.Va in the sense that you just kind of go, I don't want you on the angle, just beat the fuck out of people. I think that's not exactly very interesting for the player getting dove by a Reinhardt, or the Reinhardt going, well, that guy's killing my whole team, I guess I have to fly over there and beat his fucking ass and then stand here with my shield up for ages until my charge comes back, and then I'll fucking fly away again or whatever. So overall, I don't think dive Ryan is necessarily good for the character, but I understand why it exists. It's going to make the efficacy of charge cancel even better, because you're going to be wanting to charge more often, because the amount of value that you could potentially get from a charge is increased. Therefore, using charge more often is the better option, especially aggressively, because if you do manage to get someone, you potentially get a kill and all of their health and overhealth, which is more survivability. So it may increase his frontline aggression, where he's just pinning tanks constantly, maybe. But overall, with the amount of spam and sustain in the game, I think your best option is to just continue playing dive Ryan, but even more aggressively than before, because if you do manage to get a pin, you're basically never going to die, because you're up a pick and you're in a good angle and so on. So overall, I don't think this is good. Charge cancel in general is bad. Now, obviously, charge cancel exists for 5v5 purposes, and 5v5 is fucking awful, but it is what it is. Either way, it's the wrong direction for the hero. I would prefer it if he went back to being a frontline brawling tank with minimal angle control. So therefore, he got most of his value through pushing through the front line, creating lots of space, bursting through the front end of the team, not this gimmicky, there's a Sojourn over there, I'm going to pin over at you at 300 miles an hour and leave my entire team behind to fend for themselves, and I'm going to do my own thing. I don't think it's good for the game, and I don't think it's good for the hero, but I understand where they were going with the change. If anything, if I was going to buff Reinhardt, I honestly think the best way to buff the actual character overall, probably just end up getting rid of charge cancel in general. I don't like charge cancel, and then replace it with increased movement speed, either with his shield up or his shield down, so you can actually run a target down, go through the front line, or make it tied to a certain thing, like once he charges, after that he's got 10-15% movement speed for however long or something. Just something that makes it so he's more effective at going through the front line than he is at charging at weird angles and getting people off of them. It would likely not be attached to charge, because if it is attached to charge, it just makes his angle control better. So I thought either when his shield is down or up, he gets slightly increased movement speed so he can actually run people down. He gets really hard punished by a lot of boops, and there are a lot of boops. He's probably the most punished tank in the game when it comes to crowd control, so we get some kind of natural immunity to it or resistance to it through movement speed. That would be a better direction for the character, in my opinion, though I can see it getting out of hand very quickly with mobility creep. Like, for example, if Juno Lucio became meta, he would be unstoppable because you could literally just run down every character in the game and there'd be no stopping him. So it is a delicate balance, but to know which direction to take the hero is difficult. I just know for a fact it's not in the dive Ryan charge cancel playstyle, because it just makes him an angle control character, which I don't think he really should be. Sigma, experimental barrier, secondary ability, deployment cooldown reduced from 2 to 1 second. That's insane. Massive impact, minor perk, knockdown stun now reaches maximum duration at 30 meters, down from 40 meters. Now, this might actually end up being the biggest change in the entire patch in terms of a straight buff or nerf. The amount of power level increase he gets from this is insurmountable compared to any other change in this patch. So obviously this increases how effective he is at poking, it increases his angle control and gives him more survivability because he is able to manage his shield even easier. Therefore, he can react to situations much quicker, twice as fast, technically. So he's able to set up on angles easier, he's able to change his angle easier and faster. He's able to control angles easier because he can throw a shield up, poke here, drop shield, put shield there, and move it around more often. And obviously it increases his survivability because if he ever gets into danger and he needs to get his shield up, he gets it back 100%, or basically in half. Right, it takes half the time to get it back. Therefore, it lowers his punishment window by a half. It cuts his punishment window by 50%. That's a huge decrease to the amount of time you can have to punish a Sigma. And that's already considering the fact that he's got things like accretion and flux in order to stay alive between that uptime of the shield. Therefore, it becomes more of a task at killing Sigma, who was already difficult to kill. This is obviously going to increase his ability to play things like Sig Rush, pairing him with a Juno. Now obviously Sig Rush wasn't getting a ton of playtime in ranked or professional play, but it is an extremely strong composition where essentially all you do is you understand that, well, if a Sigma rushes you down with rock and just boulders you in the fucking brain, then you definitely die with any follow-up whatsoever. And if you increase the amount of time he's able to control angles for, but by obviously buffing the shield, well, then you make it so he's more effective at rushing people down, because you see a target, oh, drop shield, run at you, put shield up, fucking hit you in the head with a rock, and then, well, you're dead, right? So he's even better at playing Sig Rush, which already isn't a good thing for the character. Overall, the overall design of the hero, I don't really like Sigma. The only thing I like about him is the left click. Literally every other part of his kit I do not like. All of it is quite passive. It's relatively easy to use. There's not really any part of Sigma that comes out to me as honest, if you know what I mean. It's like, you're near me, I hit you in the head with a fucking rock, and if you're not near me, I'm just going to stand here and shoot you. Now, obviously, there's a lot more nuance to playing Sigma. It doesn't just boil down to, I'm just going to shoot you with my gun. But in a lot of cases, it can literally just feel like, he just shoots me with his gun and there's nothing I can do, because he's got 15 survivability options and obviously all the support in his team. So this obviously increases double shield's effectiveness as well, because if the Orisa shield drops or whatever, or you need to shield a new position, you can get on that position a lot more faster, right? The accretion change is silly because it obviously adds even more crowd control to the game. It means that you're able to throw rock, so basically at any distance, due to the fact that it's a percentage increase, technically speaking, it means that if you were to rock someone from shorter range, you're naturally going to be getting more knockdown time on that person, even if it's at 1 meter. So if you walk up to someone and hit them in the rock at point blank, you will knock them down for longer with that change, because overall 1 meter is a larger percentage of the total distance that it scales with, right? So you knock people down for I'm bad at explaining, but you know what I mean, right? You knock people down faster or for longer, no matter what. That was incoherent nonsense, but it's fine, right? Obviously, that's more CC to the game. I'm not a huge fan of CC. Now, obviously, CC can be done very well. This is not good CC because it's very spammy, it's big, and therefore it's more effective against tank heroes. CC that is especially good against tanks than squishies is obviously not a good direction, because crowd controlling a tank is more effective than crowd controlling a squishy, naturally, because tanks are superior at taking space. Therefore, if you're able to crowd control a tank more, it means that you lower their ability to take space, and because it's a space game where the entire point of the game is taking and controlling, you know, the map, then it means that the Rock is obviously going to be infinitely more effective at controlling the map. Therefore, it's overall not a good change to Sigma, because it increases his lethality and his survivability at the same time, two things that he already had to a crazy degree, if I'm being honest. Winston Short Circuit minor perk. Bonus damage to buildable objects increased from 50% to 100%. This is a giant nothing burger because the perk is absolutely fucking useless anyway. Maybe it will be making slightly better at diving like a Baptiste, or counter diving sim TPs, or something. I don't know. Overall, I don't know. Like, the perk just sucks. The correct change would be getting rid of the perk and change it for something else. The other perk is strictly better because it's just a raw damage increase. This does nothing. So it's a change, right? I can't say it's good or bad. It's a change. Ashe, rapid fire minor perk. Primary fire damage penalty reduced from 15% to 10%. Sidewinder minor perk, knockback increased for both Ashe and enemies, reduced from 20% to 12%. Now, I will start with the coach gun changes because they're ones I actually like. Coach nerf is good because the default coach gun ability by itself, without the perk, was already overpowered. So this perk made it even more overpowered, and now it's a nerf to its overall power effectiveness, which is good. Now overall, it's still bad because Coach Gun is still a broken perk, or no, ability just in general. The Get Off Me tool is boring. It's not a fun ability. I have an entire video planned purely just about Ashe, and I touch on about Coach Gun quite a lot, so I'll save this for that. But overall, I don't like Coach Gun because of the way it is. I don't think it's interesting for the perk to be, I'm going to use this to get to where I need to be for an angle, and then it's also like, I'm just going to stand here and chill out until I get dove, then I'm going to press Coach Gun and you're going to get away from me. That is overall boring. Like, I don't find that interesting. Maybe some people do. I don't. So nerfing it is good, but the nerf should have been much harder. If anything, they should have just gotten rid of the perk and changed it with something else, because, like I said, default Coach Gun on its own is already broken. Now for the other change, the extra damage on the rapid fire perk, is it just increases the amount of poke. So basically what's going to happen now is the Ashe is going to stand in an angle, wait to see someone, tag them with a single like right click, in the sense that like a scoped shot, and then they're just going to go bang, 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 and just fucking blast someone to pieces, hopefully killing him faster, because it's just a raw damage increase, which is just going to make people play more of an aggressive style, where they essentially get on an aggressive angle, tag someone, and just fucking blast them to death. Was that going to be a good thing? Maybe. It might incentivize Ashe players to go on more aggressive angles that are more risky, and therefore she becomes more diveable. Maybe it'll end up doing that, but in reality, all I think it's going to do is make it so she's better in the 1v1. I think all it's going to do is people are just going to continue scope shotting people, and then when they get dove, they're going to go, there's a Genji, and just they're going to fucking like blast them to death, and it's not going to be really fun or interesting. It's literally just a raw damage buff for Ashe, who already has too much damage. So obviously I don't like it. I think Ashe is a disgustingly broken character. So yeah, any buff to Ashe I'm naturally going to dislike. But yeah, it's easier to spam people down. It increases her 1v1 potential, and it just overall makes her more pokey because you just get more damage. So that's all. The only real thing it hurts Ashe with is ammo management will be a bit harder, because you've got a greater incentive to just like fucking machine gun people to death with your gun now. But it is what it is. Overall, Ashe changes. I like the nerfs. They should have been harder. Don't like the buffs. Should have vaulted the character instead. But, you know. Bastion, configuration artillery, ultimate ability, ultimate cost reduced by 7%. I don't know the logical reasoning behind this. The ult is shit, and that's probably why. And I agree, the ult is shit. I think it's badly designed as well. I think Bastion's old ult in Overwatch 1 was vastly superior, and this design is lazy and boring, and that's a good reason for it to be shit, because it is lazy and boring and uninteractive. So making it happen more often, I don't like, but also it doesn't matter if it happens more often, because it's shit. So it's not going to do anything anyway, and it's a nothing burger change that I don't personally really care about. Freya, primary fire damage reduced from 30 to 25, maximum ammo increased from 12 to 15. Now, this is by far the worst change in the patch when it comes to misunderstanding. Sigma was the most egregious in terms of buffing the wrong character. Freya's is the most nonsensical in terms of a complete lack of understanding of their character. So, obviously, this is not a meaningful nerf because it touches upon the worst part of the character. The only part of the hero that was actually balanced was the left clicks. And if anything, the left clicks weren't balanced because they were actually garbage. Freya's left clicks are fucking horrible. So decreasing the damage and increasing the ammo doesn't make it more skill-based. If anything, it makes it more of a spam, annoying AIDS ability, because the shooting that you will be doing is going to be non-precise, because precise shooting is less likely to be rewarded because it does less damage and you have more bullets, so you may as well shoot more bullets. Therefore, all this does is make it so that you're more likely to shoot the tanks than actually target squishies. Plus, when you realize that Freya's left clicks have a bunch of bloom attached to them, so accurate fire is extremely difficult anyway because the bullets don't even go where you're aiming and they're slow as shit. It makes it so her left clicks went from a this might be useful in the 1v1 to I can only shoot the fucking tank with the left clicks and they're completely pointless at doing anything else. It also doesn't touch on the massive mobility creep of the character, where she can basically just do whatever the fuck she wants, because not only does using her mobility options get her away from whatever thing she's trying to get away from, it also resets the strongest part of her kit, which is the right click, which didn't get changed, and she remains able to 2-tap squishies with body shots. Now, if Freya could 2-tap people to the head with the bolts, absolutely fine. If it came down to headshot, body shot kills, maybe I'd be okay with that. Maybe. But I definitely would be okay with 2 bolts and a couple of left clicks. Relf thinks it should be 2 bodies and 1 left click. I think 1 left click isn't the best way to do it because then, again, that rewards spam. I think if it came down to a couple of left clicks and you actually buffed the left clicks and nerfed the right clicks, it could mean that Freya could actually be a bit more of a close range assassin character where you jump on someone, bolt, left click, bolt, left click, and then that's you killing someone, and you get that kind of like bursty assassin playstyle, but you keep obviously the abilities to play in your 1v1 because of the fact your left clicks are good. I don't think it should be 1 because then it just comes down to bolt, left click, bolt, and then that guy's guaranteed dead. The same issue persists, I believe. It would just happen at a slightly closer range. And if anything, it would make the character more spammy. Because the second you actually land a couple of left clicks on someone, you just go boink, 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 boink with the fucking right clicks, which obviously I don't think is good. This increases the spam, like I said, which is obviously not a good thing. The mouse one, the left clicks, should be buffed. Like I said, I don't know why they're nerfing them. It's the only fair part of her kit, and obviously the right click shouldn't 2-tap. That's everything for Freya. I think Freya is a disgustingly broken character. Very well designed. Has so much potential to not only be a fun character, but a very fair character. And they've just decided that, well, let's just make her as bullshit as possible. Let's remove quite literally the only fair part of her kit and replace it with more dog shit, which is absolutely fantastic. And honestly, the Blizzard way, if I'm being honest. Storm Bow, projectile size increased from 0.1 to 0.125 meters. Dragon Strike ultimate ability, ultimate cost reduced by 8%. Damage per second increased from 300 to 400. Dragon Fury major perk, attack speed duration increased from 1 to 2 seconds. Yamagami technique, major perk, cooldown speed increased from 250% to 300%. So overall, first change with the projectile size, I think is overall okay for Hanzo. People are going to disagree, and they're going to say the classic Hanzo shooting logs, when it's actually, I think, the smallest projectile in the entire game. So he's not shooting logs, and if anything, he's shooting pencils, so, you know, he's already a shit hero. He's not good at literally anything. Basically, every character in the game does everything he does better than he does. Even characters that don't do the things he's meant to do the things better than he does. So overall, the character's fucking wank. He's probably one of the worst, if not the worst character in the game. So buffing him is a good idea. Is this the direction to go for? Increasing the consistency of his left click? I personally don't mind it. I think it's fine overall, because a consistency increase for Hanzo is likely what he needs, considering he is the spammy character. And I personally would increase his projectile speed to make it more skill-based and less spam, but then you run into issues where it's like, people have been learning the muscle memory for the projectile speed for so long that fucking with that is a tough thing to do, so it's hard to justify doing that. So overall, to increase consistency, I think this is better than a projectile speed buff, because the projectile speed buff just makes him feel different, whereas this makes him feel the same but just gives him more consistency. So overall, I think it's okay. The ultimate cost reduction is, I think, honestly fine as well. The ult is fucking wank. Even with this, it's still shit. Even though it charged really fast already, it's like, who fucking cares if it charges quickly if it's useless? Even in Grav Dragon, it was fucking shit. Like, basic support healing could out heal it. It was really bad. The increase in damage is interesting. I believe that's actually because Zen is buffed later in this patch. I think they're actually doing it to try to prevent Grav Dragon, but all that does is, the more you increase Trank healing, and the more you increase Dragon damage, the more effective Dragon itself becomes naturally because of the DPS passive. So, let's say they buffed it up to 1,000 damage and 1,000 healing for Zen Trank, then because of the 30% reduction, it would actually be 1,000 damage for 700 healing. So the more you buff the Dragon and Zenyatta ult to compensate, you're actually buffing Dragon a lot more. So if you wanted the Trank to beat the Dragon in Grav Dragon, you'd actually have to buff Trank substantially more because of the DPS passive, which is pretty fucking silly in my opinion, but it is what it is. Anyways, his perks are fucking shit. I don't really care about them. What even are they? Yamagami technique. Oh yeah, when you're wall climbing, your little dash thingy comes back faster. It's fucking shit anyway. And the attack speed, sure, I don't care. Like, honestly, I don't care. Hanzo is so shit. You could give him whatever you want. He's shit. I don't care. Junkrat aluminum frame minor perk now prevents trapped enemies from being healed instead of revealing them through walls. TikTok major perk concussion mine arming time reduced from 0.5 to 0.25 seconds. Now, this is a big deal for two reasons. So, firstly, the trap now antis people instead of giving you wall hacks against them. What does this do? Basically, it just turns Junkrat into even more of a me shoot tank. Me shoot tank. Oh, tank walk at me trap floor, me shoot tank. Because anti-heal is naturally going to be more effective against the tank hero, because they're the ones that are most likely to be needing to receive healing. Now, obviously, that might be technically wrong in some instances, but consider like a tank like Reinhardt, that this is likely going to affect the most. He eats the most resources, therefore, it's going to affect him the hardest, and he's going to be, obviously, he needs the resources in the first place, so denying him those resources is going to affect him more than it's going to affect a Sigma, who's less likely to need the resources. So this fucks over aggressive tanks and barely hurts passive tanks, because you are more likely to walk into a trap as a more aggressive tank, because you're going to be walking forward more often. I don't think this is good. Adding even more anti-heal to the game is bad, because this is just going to increase the amount of playtime for things like Kiriko and so on and Life Grip, because you're going to be trying to deny those anti-heals, and which are bad. I think anti is generally okay for the game. I don't have a problem with anti. I mean, especially on Ana, it's fine. But it does get to the point where it becomes a little bit too much, and its application becomes important. You should not get anti-heal simply because you're doing an action, and that action is weak, therefore we give you anti-heal to make it stronger. That shouldn't be how anti-heal works. Anti-heal should be the thing that you are applying, not an after effect or a byproduct of the thing that you're doing, because anti-heal is already strong. Therefore, if you're going to be having an ability where their main use case is applying anti, then their main use case should be applying anti. It shouldn't be like Queen ult, where it's, I'm going to apply anti to you, and, well, also I'm going to do a fuckload of damage over time to you as well, because then the actual main product of the ultimate is the damage, with the byproduct being the anti, which I personally don't think is very good application for an anti-heal, because the actual purpose of an anti-heal should be the fact that the main purpose of the ability that you're using is to apply the anti-heal itself, because it is so strong. Therefore, giving it to Junkrat makes absolutely no sense, because the trap itself's main application is not to apply anti-heal, but to keep people CC'd in a position for long enough. It's snare. So why would you snare people and anti-heal them? I don't know. They just wanted to buff this perk and thought, fuck it, give it anti-heal. That is bad reasoning, therefore I don't like it. Concussion main arming time reduced. Basically, when you throw a Junkrat main, it only does max damage once the main arms. So if you throw a main and blow it up midair, I don't believe it does max damage. That might be wrong, but once it lands on the ground and once it sits there for a second, then it arms, then it does more damage. I think that's how it works. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, and I should have checked the wiki, and I didn't, because I'm lazy. So tell me I'm lazy. Anyway, I saw Relth's stream where he was changing, where he was looking at this, and it looked like it did more damage when it armed. So basically, this just turns him into more of a, I'm just going to blow up the tank hero character, which is not exactly very fun or interesting whatsoever. Therefore, I don't really care what this perk or ability actually does when it, considering its arming time, because to me it just sounds like me shoot tank, and me shoot tank is fucking boring, so I don't like it. Well, there you go. Reaper Death Blossom ultimate ability, ultimate cost increased by 9%. If you had to ask me why they did that, I literally couldn't tell you. Genuinely, no idea. The character was okay, but Blossom is the shittiest part of their entire kit. So why are we nerfing the Blossom? Like, surely if you were going to go and look at Reaper, you'd go, what makes Reaper annoying? And you'd go, okay, well, give him an extra second on his Wraith form, or like drop his pellet damage by like 0.05 or something. Why would you go make it so he's blossoming less often? If anything, it's a buff to the character, because it means the shit-can GM Reaper one-trick in my game is less likely to just kill himself every other fight with ult, because he won't have it. So if anything, this is a buff to the character, because it means he gets to use his suicidal ultimate even less. So genuinely no fucking idea what the point of the Reaper change is. Genuinely, I couldn't tell you. It makes zero sense to me, and in my opinion, it's a buff to the character, because it means I'm more likely to win a ranked game if I have a Reaper on my team, because they're less likely to use their ultimate ability. It might lead to Reaper shooting more tanks to build ult more often. Maybe. I don't fucking know. It's fine, I guess. A pointless nerf, I think. Tracer Pulse Pistol spread increased from 3.0 to 3.5 degrees. Tracer nerf. Basically, she has to be closer to her targets now to land all of her bullets, because her bloom is bigger. She's gaping more. She's gaped. I think that's a good change, because she did need a nerf. I think realistically the change should have been a damage nerf instead of this, because I think it just makes her a bit of a tank buster when her damage is that high, and you increase the spread, you're going to incentivize the amount of people shooting tanks instead of shooting squishies, because you've got high damage but big spread, and you don't really want to get close to a lot of characters in the current meta, because a lot of them are really good at getting you away. Therefore, you're a bit more like, let me just shoot the tank instead, because it's more valuable. So overall, I think keeping the spread the same would have been okay, and just lowering the damage to 5.75 or something. That would have been a better direction in my opinion, but overall this still kind of works. Obviously, apart from the increase to shooting the tank heroes, it's going to make it so that Tracer's overall engagement distance is lower, because right now it was a bit too high. It was a little bit too easy for a Tracer to get into a backline and one-clip a guy from slightly too far away. I think you should need to be a little bit closer than Tracer needs to be currently to do it, but that also just comes down to her damage, because she is a bit more forgiving with how many bullets you can miss to kill someone. Therefore, it's a bit of a hard thing to say which one should have been changed, but overall, I'm willing to try this change, see how it works for the character. But obviously, the lower engagement distance means Tracer has to be more committal, so it might end up making the character more aggressive instead of the spammy DPS passive application character that she kind of was of the past, where a lot of her value came from just standing in the backline and just shooting the enemy team to apply the DPS passive to them, and then when she saw a low target, double blink, fry that guy, recall out. But it may also increase the spam/passive playstyle, because you need to close more distance on a character, so you're less likely to get close to an Ana if she's got nade, because it's more likely to hit you, because you need to close the distance on the target in order to do more effective damage. Therefore, you're more likely to get hit by those AoE abilities, you're more likely to get hit with defensive cooldowns, and so on. So this is a change that's really hard to predict the outcome of. Usually I'm pretty good at looking at a change and going, I think this will lead to this or this, and it'll be good or bad. This one is genuinely hard to say what the outcome will be. I can see the benefits of it, I can see the negatives of it. This may be one of the only changes in the patches where I'm kind of with the devs. I agree with them in the sense that this might be a good thing to try overall. Maybe, again, like I said, lowering the damage would have been the better option. However, I don't necessarily disagree with this change either. So I am willing to see how this works. And overall, I think completely reasonable change to the character. Widowmaker Infrasight ultimate ability, ultimate cost decreased 10%. Why are we buffing Widow? That's a pointless buff. Widow's already disgustingly overpowered. He's absolutely game breaking and needs a rework, and it's just going to increase the amount of passive, non-proactive play, because the amount of uptime for her ultimate is obviously going to be higher. She's more likely to have it, and it's going to be online more. Therefore, there's going to be more hiding from Widow. So if anything, it just increases Widowmaker's ability to control the map, which she was already really good at. If anything, if we were going to be buffing Widowmaker, which we shouldn't be doing, if we were going to buff Widowmaker, I genuinely cannot think of a single reasonable change to Widowmaker to increase her already ludicrously high power. I don't get the idea behind buffing Widow, especially buffing the part of her kit that is the least skillful. I can understand if you were like, oh, let's make it so that if Widowmaker headshots someone, she uses less ammo or something. Like, at least that's rewarding skill. That's still a dumb change and shouldn't happen, by the way. But you know what I'm saying? At least that's a reward for a skill check. This one is literally just, you have shot enough people or waited long enough, you now have more map control than you already did. Which is fucking pointless, because the character's already good at that, and it's just a dumb change. There's literally no... It's hard to be rational and logical about changes like this when there is no rationale or logic behind the change in the first place. It would be like trying to explain an impossibility. It doesn't make sense. You can't do it. There's no logic behind this, so you can't logic your way through the reasoning behind it, or trying to understand it, because there was no reasoning. They just fucking did it for some reason. I don't know why. Minimum fall off range increased from 20 to 25 meters. Glide boost ability 1, movement acceleration in air reduced when changing directions after the initial movement burst. A lot of people are calling this a massive Juno nerf with the movement, and I would agree. But overall, she was really fucking difficult to hit as a projectile character, unless you were literally directly on her. Like, if you're a Hanzo and a 1v1 with a Juno, like, there's solid chances you get your ass beat, because she's so difficult to hit, especially in the higher ranks, where Juno players really understand hitbox manipulation and movement and so on. I can understand the rationale behind this change, but although it does nerf her survivability, which I basically didn't really need to nerf, her survivability was already fine. Her movement was a little crazy, and it did need a nerf. But this is not the good way to go about it, I don't think, because it just makes her feel like clunky dog shit. She just feels so clunky because it's like you just feel like you're like moving around in mud. It feels shit. If they were gonna do this, I would change the overall movement speed, not the direction change movement speed. Just make her slower overall in the air, or make it so that when she pops glide boost, she's a certain movement speed, like 115% of her initial movement speed, and then over the duration of the cooldown, it naturally lowers back down to the default value. That would have been a better change than making her feel like she's moving around in quicksand. But I do agree she did need some kind of nerf to do with her movement survivability because it was too much. Mobility creeps are very real. I don't like it. I think touching on it now is a good time to do it. You know, it's always better sooner than later. But yeah, I think the increase to her range on her gun is actually completely fine. She was already relatively diveable because she has 225, so although she was hard to hit when she was moving around properly, if you caught her at a good time, she was guaranteed to be dead. So increasing the range is honestly fine. I think her healing output is too much. I think orbs are still broken and overpowered and boring to play against, and I would have liked some other nerfs, especially to our actual raw healing output. I think that's a problem. I think it's too high. And I also do not like the effectiveness of orbs or how they even operate. I'd redesign the whole ability, if I'm being honest, and just give her something else. But in terms of keeping her kit the same, these changes are okay. Apart from the movement one. Again, I would have liked a different kind of change, but it is at least attacking the correct thing for Juno. It's not all the things that need changed, but it is one of the things that does need changed, and I appreciate that they realized that. Lucio sound barrier ultimate cost increased by 9%. I think this is a terrible change to offset the healing buffs that he received from the DPS passive buffs. So the DPS passive was buffed, they realized Lucio's probably not healing enough, and then they just buffed the amount of healing he got, and then that obviously increased the amount of ult charge he was generating, so he was getting beat too fast. So I understand the reasoning, but it's solving an issue that you made. You created a problem, solved it, which created a problem, and then you solved that by creating a problem, and then you solved that by creating a problem. And then, like, none of this would have had to happen if you just didn't make Season 9. Do you know what I'm saying? And instead of going and revising that change, you're going, you know what, we tried it, it was fucking wanky, and we shouldn't have done it. Instead of doing that, they go, guys, what if we just made 1,000 fucking changes to the game over and over again, changing minute details that never attack the core issue with any of the actual problem characters, and we just, you know, say fuck it, and we'll just change shit randomly, because that's what this is. Lucio needs buffs to his solo play, not to his passive team play style. His passive team play style, totally valid, totally skill-based, absolutely fine, but it's way too valuable to do that than it is to go for solo play. They should be balanced. There should be a trade. For example, it should be just as valuable to have the understanding that you can go, I need to speed my Ryan around, I need to do this for my team, and so on. It should be just as valuable to think as a team player as it should be to go, this Widow's fucking up my team, I need to dive them. But in the current state of Lucio right now, it's, I'm just going to perma-heal bot my team forever because I get a fuckload of ult charge for doing it, and there's no point in me ever going to have to go to solo play because my own healing efficacy on myself is fucking wank post Season 9, therefore I'm not able to maintain myself in duels as effectively as I should be, therefore I'm better off just perma-healing my team because that's way more effective than going off and doing solo play. Also, his boop should have been nerfed. It wasn't. The perk that increases his boop distance is ridiculously overpowered and should have been changed. It didn't. His overall boop in this is bullshit and too high. I don't like it. It should have been nerfed. It's just simply too much CC, and when you combine that with the fact that he is more of a team play character right now in the sense that he's going to be in his team, it's, again, most likely going to be affecting frontline tanks that are aggressive and less so attacking passive characters, whereas we should be making changes to the game that directly affect passive characters more than aggressive characters, because we have an aggression problem in the game. We have a passive problem in the game where people are too passive. Therefore, you should make changes that attack passive play and reward proactive play, but that's the opposite of that by keeping the boop so high, which is just so silly to me because they clearly just don't understand what is going on in their game because they don't understand it to a high level. Last but not least is Zenyatta. Harmony Orb healing increased from 30 to 35 health per second. Transcendence healing per second increased from 300 to 400. Now, I had mentioned earlier in the video that this is likely an offset to Hanzo Dragon, and I explained it then. But yeah, basically, just I think because Hanzo Dragon got a buff, it means that they're buffing Trank in order to make it so that Grav Dragon is less effective. They're trying to prevent a Grav Dragon meta, so that's probably the increase to Trank, likely why it's happened, and because the DPS passive increase. And his healing increased from 30 to 35 second on Harmony Orb. Now, honestly, totally fine with these changes. They're purely changes to offset the DPS passive, which is, again, creating problems to solve problems to create problems to solve problems, which is not a very good feedback loop, but, you know, it's Blizzard. I would have liked if they nerfed Discord and Snapkick. Snapkick, realistically, just shouldn't be on the character in the first place. Just get rid of Snapkick, and Discord should have been nerfed. I'd have been totally fine with Discord going from 25% to 20% and Harmony Orb going from 30 to 40. I think that'd have been way better for the game. I think Relf has decent numbers on Zen. I forget exactly why his reasoning for it is, so I apologize. But I believe he says Zen should be outputting about 42 healing per second on the orb. For some reason, I should go and watch his VODs and see why that is, but I'm not going to right now, so we're just going to go with 40 healing per second. It's likely to do with the DPS passive. Not entirely sure. Either way, Harmony Orb kind of sucks balls, and Discord Orb is insanely broken, so make Harmony Orb slightly better, make Discord Orb a little bit worse, and make the two abilities a little bit more balanced together, and I think that would have been, you know, a much better place for the character. And Snapkick, obviously get rid of that. And yeah, that was the patch. There is one more thing though. Servasa and New Junk City got map reworks. I am going to make a video specifically just about Servasa, just the Servasa rework, because that character was fundamentally broken and competitively unviable even before the rework. And even after the rework, it's become worse. Now, it's a lot prettier. The map is gorgeous. Don't get me wrong, the map is gorgeous. But I'm going to make an entire video going over the competitive unviability of the map, and how the map actually massively favors one side on multiple points, and how it completely breaks the game. And I guarantee the win rate, depending on the side you're on, will be drastic. I think getting one side instead of the other side might actually increase your winning odds naturally to 60, 65, or even 70%. The advantages are that huge, depending on which points you get and which order they operate in. But that's a big reason I don't like Flashpoint, is you need absolutely brilliant, dare I say perfect, map design to make a game mode like Flashpoint work. And Blizzard is good at making a map look good. They aren't very good at making a map play good in terms of its competitive viability. So I don't like Flashpoint. I see a lot of things on Twitter where people are like, if you don't like Flashpoint, you're low elo. I think if you do like Flashpoint, it's because the only reason that you're high elo is because you abuse the broken characters on the shitty game modes and on the shitty maps. And that's why you like Flashpoint, because you win on it more often, because you know how to cheese the game mode. So there you go. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to make an entire video about Servasa and how it's fucking broken and should be vaulted immediately, because it is ruining ranked if you get it and you get the wrong side. You basically just insta-lose against the balanced team, which is fucking wank. But it is what it is. Anyway, I realize this is quite a long video, and hopefully the bullet points made it concise and coherent. Hopefully it made my points easier to understand, and we stayed in a nice flow throughout the video. There were some times I broke off from my bullet points, and I rambled a bit, but I tried to keep it, you know, under control. Hopefully I did. Hopefully this video was to a higher quality. I love you all. I hope you have a good day. Thank you for watching this entire thing. If you made it, that was a long video and hard to sit through. I love you. I hope you have a good day. Mwah. Goodbye. 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 Have a good day. Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.